landlord relationship. So gibuhat ni Quezon to have a gibuhat ni nga reform to have an equal share between the tenants or the farmers and the landlord, and they will have a peaceful relationship with each other. Kay para na ay ang plan ni Quezon Manggod was that he promoted equity but had limited implementation due to political resistance. Kay during these days, mas nai-power si Quezon. However, ang mga elite nga mga landlords, they also have the power. They can pay the taxes more than of that the standard. So mapalit nila ang uban nga tao sa government maong nagi resistance nga mahitabo. Although na hitabo ni siya nga Tenancy Act on 1993, but there are a lot of resistance and contracts and anti-tenant dismissal provisions were also included. Ang mga nagmugna atong mga anti-tenant dismissal provisions kay katong mga elite nga mga landlords, mga naay kaya mga datong landlords. Second one is the regulation of 10% interest, no dismissal of landlords, then contracts for 1 year only. However, wala gid siya, na-implement siya pero na siya kuan limited iyang implementation due to the political resistance tungod pod sa anti-tenant dismissal provisions nga na include during his times. Next would be Manuel A. Rojas policy on land reform. So si Manuel Rojas iyang gi-introduce ang Tenant Act nga 70-30% in favor of tenants. It is also aimed to regulate shared tenancy policies. Iyang gibuhat ni kay katong manggod kang Quezon kay dili mo sugot ang mga landowners. However, nakita man nila nga ang mga farmers are the ones to supply all our needs, all our essentials, all our foods back on these days, on those times. Maong ilang himuan sa dog reform nga mas mo focus sila sa farmers because farmers deserve more percentage than that of the landowners. Kaya they were waiting for kuan ra biya plight sa mga farmers. Next kay si Ramon Magsaysay, Policy on Land Reforms, Agriculture Tenancy Act 1954, Tenure of Tenants and Landowners, and the other one is Land Reform Act of 1995, distribution of rice and corn lands over 200 hectares for farmers and 600 for corporations. So Ramon Magsaysay enacted laws like the Agricultural Tenancy Act on 1954 and Land Reform Act on 1955 to secure tenancy rights and facilitate land distribution. So ang mga farmers kay mga entitled sila to palit og land over specific size ra pod nga threshold. So next, kang Carlos P. Garcia nga panahon, he promoted the Agricultural Land Reform Code, reducing land retention to 75 hectares, and then allow niya ang mga small farmers para makabayad og mga land on flexible terms. So they were able to, like, let's just call it nga sa pagkakaroon nga times mura siya loan nga bayaran sa mga farmers gradually para ma-purchase nila in a flexible manner or flexible nga terms. So next would be Ferdinand Marcos policies on land reform, kani kay kang Marcos nga era. So RA 63990, the Agrarian Reform Specified Fund Act, finance the agrarian reform programs. He established funding mechanisms for agrarian reform through Agrarian Reform Special Fund Act. So ang Emancipation Act of PD 27 or the Tenant Emancipation Act operational land transfer. Mas i-focus siya on operational land transfer sa mga small nga farmers. Gilimitan nila ang ownership to 7 hectares para ma-prevent ang monopolization. Mo ni ang purpose ni during the Marcos era. So here, the Department of Agrarian Reform. It is the leading agency of agrarian reform that undertakes improvement and development of program beneficiaries. The Department of Agrarian Reform or the DAR is the primary agency nga nag-implement og agrarian nga policies, focusing on enhancing the welfare of beneficiaries through land distribution and developmental programs. So here, what is DAR? The DAR logo shows the department's acronym representing the institution and its role as the lead agency in the implementation of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, or the CARP. The green stands for fertility and productivity, while yellow represents hope and a golden harvest of agrarian reform beneficiaries who are the recipient. So, ang kaning CARP signed by Corazon Aquino, siya ang nag-fight ani. She aimed to para redistribute ang lands with equitable access, while nagpromote siya atog social justice. CARP remains a cornerstone of agrarian reform up until now. So, also known as the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law or the CARP, ang nagsign ana is si Corazon Aquino. Its primary goal is to ensure and promote the welfare of landless farmers and farm workers, as well as social justice and equity among rural areas. And the Fidel Ramos policies on land reform. Distribution of 2.66 million hectares and speeded up the implementation of CARP, and the Republic Act number 8532 extends the another 10 years of CARP. So Fidel Ramos himself, accelerated land distribution under CARP and extended its implementation through RA 8532. Next, kay kang Joseph Ejercito Estrada, policies on land reform. Magkabalikat para sa kaunlarang agraryo, aim to introduce foreign investors to the agricultural sector and help farmers learn advanced technology. Next, kay kang Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. She implementation of land to the farmers 17% only given. So ni-focus siya sa katong CARPER, Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Extension and Reforms. Republic Act 9700 extended to 5 years and allocated more funds. So they were all fighting for the farmers' rights. Mo nang ilang fight per me ang agrarian reform. So the main issues or problems of agrarian reform: political interest and greed, failure of land transfer, circumvention of law, lack of political will, implementation of law, lack of justice and equality, lack of sufficient funds, technology, and materials. And challenges in agrarian reforms kay first is the political interest of greed, nagay resistance from elites nga mo control sa large tracts of land. Ang circumvention of laws, loopholes in legislation allow landowners to bypass reforms. And failure of land transfer, delayed or incomplete transfer of ownership to beneficiaries. Next is the lack of political will. So weak ang enforcement by authorities. Munang dugay kay ma-transfer ang mga documents, munang mahitabo nga naay mahitabo nga failure of land transfer. And after that, mahitabo sad to ang circumvention of law nga naay loopholes nga mahitabo nga mag-allow sa mga landowners nga i-bypass nila ang reform. Next is the justice and equity issues, persistent inequalities in land ownership, and the insufficient funds, financial constraints, mo inibabag sa pag-implement sa reform. And then technology and materials, lack of access to modern tools and infrastructure for beneficiaries. And lastly, farmers back of the day up until now, they still are fighting for reforms because handod karon nagipoy failure ang, I mean, we call it failure. We have the right to say it failure man sa ang government because maybe karon mas kuba ang supply chain of the government. Muna nga we were able to, our government now mas may prefer nga mo palit og mga bugas sa lain nga nasod than that of our farmers itself nga mga products, kay mas mahal man ang baligya sa ato ang farmers and makaless man sila sa lain nga nasod. Kay ang main problem ana is ang supply chain. Maybe guba ang supply chain and wala siya naayo og pangita og solution. And then mao naman ang traditional nga nabuhat sa mga past pag mga leaders nga mas mo prefer sila nga mo buy sa lain nga nasod og mga needs nato, like for example rice. Muna nga up until now mas niasa ta sa lain nga nasod sa ato ang mga kinahanglanon. That is all. Thank you.